Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on The Father Show. And I'm your host, Mike Thompson. Today, we're going to be talking about the need to reach and engage men while they are expected fathers so we can make it a better America for ourselves and for our kids. So don't go away. Stay tuned. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on The Father Show. And we've got a fantastic show for you today. And we're going to be talking about something that is really very important to our kids and to America as a whole. Because we're going to be talking with Tony Trammell. And he's going to be giving us some insight into why we need to engage men before they become fathers and what we can do about it. Now, Tony, he's been married for over 31 years, has 3 kids, 3 grown kids, and he is the CEO and founder of Dadhood. And we're going to be talking about that. And that's a center where it's an organization where he helps sinners start men's ministries. And we're going to be getting into that. And he's got about 4 books out, and we're going to be talking about those as well. So you stay tuned. But ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Tony Trammell to the show. Hey, Tony, how are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, I can't complain too much. It's
Good to be with you today.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you being here on the show today and bringing your expertise to it. And this is a subject matter that is very important. But before we get into that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about you?
Well, I'm not sure everybody wants to hear about me, but I will. Um, I've been married, like I say, for over 31 years to Amy. We have 3 grown-up kids, Scott, Joe, and Tara, who, thanks to their mother, turned out pretty well. Since 2001, I've been involved. Actually, I take that back. 1999, I've been involved with pregnancy resource centers, and 2001, I began working with young men in the centers. And then in 2003, I was able to basically become a full-time volunteer, and we started a full-time men's ministry. And I did that in the center, working with young men for 7 years. Into that 7 years, we started getting questions and some feedback from other pregnancy resource centers that they wanted to kind of duplicate what we were doing. And so I began to think a little more outside the box and a little more outside of what we were doing, in that we had actually 2 centers at the time, and try to help other centers do what we were doing. Not that we had any great knowledge, but we did have some experience by then. So in 2010, I founded Dadhood, and I took a lot of the materials that we had used over this previous 7 years, the vast majority of which I had to write because there was no other curriculum or help out there to work with expectant fathers, and turned that into our curriculum, and then wrote a couple of other things to go alongside it. And since then, the Lord has blessed and opened doors, and here we are almost 11 years later, and I get to be with you. So it's been a really amazing journey. So very honored to be able to do what Lord has allowed me to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a blessing to be called to do something and able to
Yes.
do it and watch him open up doors for you.
Yes. Amen.
So yeah, I commend you on that because sometimes we don't, when God gives us the directions, we don't take that directions, you
Yeah.
know.
Yes. Guilty. Yeah.
Well, yeah, aren't
Yeah.
we all?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about the getting to dads before they become fathers and getting to men become before fathers. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, we have an obvious absentee father problem in
Hmm.
America today. And I think everyone would agree with that statement if you just look around. And over the years, I've um, tried to kind of treat that problem and try to figure that issue out. But um, I think that it's important to reach the young men while they are still expectant fathers because we need to get them on board from the very beginning. Um, if there's a positive pregnancy test, usually that will start things in motion either one direction. One is just a source of amazing joy,
Hmm.
um, but also it could also become what some would term a crisis. And I think it's just crisis because of um, the unknown factor. That it really still is a miracle, and it is an amazing joy to become a father.
Hmm.
But the crisis comes into play when it's not seen as that. It's seen as that joy. So I think if we get, and I've seen this over the years, if we get young men on board, get them engaged in the pregnancy and not just the idea of being a father after the baby is born, but we can get them um, feeling like they have ownership in the pregnancy and get them involved. It becomes a more seamless transition once the baby is born that they already are they're already committed, they're already involved.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we have a problem not doing that, and for several reasons, which is what we found the Dadhood to try to help with.
Yeah. Do you see that society is kind of minimize the male's role in even through the pregnancy, for instance?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I think that we've almost, in many ways, made the um, fathers immaterial.
Hmm.
They're just not necessary. Um, I was asked a couple weeks ago to write a blog for um, a website for single moms to
Hmm.
try to share um, some sort of wisdom, some sort of the male side, if you will. And I kept trying to come back to how do I whittle down all of the issues so that it would be um, applicable to the moms, so it would be more understanding to the moms. And I just kept coming back to a real simple title: is "Dads Are Necessary."
Hmm.
Um, I think um, the root of the issue is why we founded and why we gave our ministry the name that we did. There's a difference between being a father and being a dad.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not sure we always catch that. I hope that we do. So we went from fatherhood to dadhood, and there are millions of men out there today who are fathers, but they've never been dads,
Hmm.
um, and they've just been absent. And if we can get them on board as soon as they find out that they are a father, that they are going to be they're already a father, once the baby has been conceived, but that they're going to be, um, they have the opportunity to be a dad, 7, 8 months down the road.
Hmm.
Um, if we can get them engaged from that moment, I've seen a lot more success at making them um, better fathers and not what we term to be deadbeat dads, which is
Yeah.
a very sad term.
Yeah. Now, what would you say is the difference? If we got a young person out there listening right now, what is the difference between being a father and a dad?
Well, it starts with just simple fact of being there. Um, if they're there, there's a very good chance of becoming a dad. Now, I know men who have been, with their kids their whole lives, and they still really don't grasp the concept of being a dad and not just a father,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Um, but being a dad goes beyond just being there. It means being involved. It means being really aware of the blessing that fatherhood is, and not just looking at it as so many young men do when they find out that they're involved in a really an unplanned pregnancy most of the time.
Yeah.
uh, is their reaction that um, there's just a fear that that sets in, and um, they need to understand that the possibility of going what we call beyond fatherhood to dadhood, if you will, for
Mm-hmm.
um, odd sounding term, I guess, to many. Um, the responsibilities seem small compared to the blessings that come from that.
Yeah.
So they need to understand there is a difference, not just being the father of a child, because, most any man can be a father, but the idea of being a dad.
Now, do you have, say, one particular fear that you see, you know, expected fathers have about becoming a dad?
Well, I think it can be multifaceted, but I think it comes down to um, at the base of it all. After all these years it's taken me to figure this out, I think a lot of it is just ignorance, and I don't mean that as a derogatory term. It's just that ignorance breeds fear,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just not aware of what it really means um, to be a dad. And most of, I work with the vast majority of the work I do is with pregnancy resource centers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have figured out over the years that young men who come in who are involved um, in an unplanned pregnancy, or perhaps considering abortion, or who are just perhaps considering, walking away uh, from the situation, about 90% of them come from father absent homes themselves.
Right.
So they've had no real example of what a dad even is. Um, they can't even grasp the concept of what it means to be a dad because they've had no positive male role model in their lives at all. So what they've known to be normal is, what we see um, as the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and it's become a generational issue. And I think that has led from absent fathers producing absent fathers because they just don't um, know any better.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. They don't know what a man is really supposed. They've never had those examples in a lot of
right,
cases. And
right,
I know statistically they say that young men that come from fatherless homes, or even girls for that matter, are
right.
7 times more likely to be pregnant or have a child in their teen years.
Yes, yes. There's the National Fatherhood Initiative is a wonderful organization, and they do ongoing research into fatherhood,
Mm-hmm.
and they put out a pretty good sized book every year called Father Facts.
Hmm.
And the numbers are pretty consistent over the years. They're sad, but they're pretty
Yeah.
consistent that the side effects of coming from a father absent home, the percentages of problems are just mind-boggling. Besides being 7 times more likely to be involved in a teen pregnancy, they're more likely to drop out of school, more
Mm-hmm.
likely to be incarcerated, to have behavioral issues, to be abused, uh, to grow up in poverty. I mean, the list just goes on and on of the side effects that we see from being a product of a father absent home,
Now,
girls and guys.
right, right, absolutely. We hear so much about, father son relationships and the importance of a father being in the son's life, but it's really important even for the being a part of the girl's life just as well. I mean, there's different dynamics there, but it's still important for the father to be in the daughter's life. Do
Absolutely.
you think a lot of times, for the young men, that some of the things that they have, like you were saying, behavior problem, that is probably anger?
Yes. Yeah, I've really been um, kind of caught me off guard years ago, and I've noticed it and tried to pay more attention to it since. There are a lot of angry young men out there. We see that in the violent tendencies that we see in young men today, the aggressiveness that we see in them, and really after talking to literally hundreds over the last 20 years, there's a lot of anger towards their absent fathers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and there's some uh, really some contempt there that that he walked away from them.
Yeah.
And then there's also some um, false guilt or some heart issues that they feel on some level, what did I do to make him not want to be involved in my life? What have I done wrong? And turning that inward and making an even bigger problem. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you say, there is a lot of anger out there among young men, and it comes out in various ways. It'll come out towards the moms of their babies.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come out in criminal activities or uh, outbursts of anger,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But it's going to come out somewhere. Sometimes it comes out in the form of child abuse. Um, but a lot of it, when you cut through it, and we have some lessons about that in our curriculum, that you cut down through the anger to find the source, and quite often it goes back to their father.
And do you now we have absentee mothers as well.
Hmm.
So I know this is a father, program, but doesn't that still equate the same way to if a mother is not a part of the child's life?
Yes, yes. I think the numbers for 2020 have not come out yet, but just last week I saw a um, probably an estimated report of combining stats with the census that's going to be coming out later this year.
Mm-hmm.
um, that about 18 million kids um, live without their father in the home. And then about a fourth, about 20 million or so, I think, live in single parent homes. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the kids who are living or who are growing up in one parent homes, of course, the vast number are, um, father absent, but the effect can be somewhat different, but it's still the same side effects if the mom is not in the home.
Yeah.
And that's becoming more frequent. I think I've talked to a lot of young men over the years that they're sadly that their mom is not involved because she's in rehab, or she has addiction issues, or perhaps incarcerated herself. So
Mm-hmm.
that is out there, and that probably has an even more um, sad effect on the girls
Yeah.
dads can be what they can be, but um, I think it's growing in number, the number of kids who are growing up in mother absent homes too.
Yeah. How do you think we can get more of our men to be engaged, with their kids, and even with the girl that's pregnant? And I know sometimes the girl gets pregnant, and like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's a oops, and you really wasn't expecting that. But once you have done it and you conceive in a child, you got to get involved. What can we do or say to these young men that are listening that we could get them more involved and to stay involved?
Yeah, well, the first thing, and actually, the first thing that we um, try to help with in a pregnancy center, and the first thing that may be involved in our curriculum is just to get them to not panic. If it's an unplanned pregnancy and they get the news of a positive test, um, sometimes panic ensues because they're not ready at all, or at least they feel they're not ready at all. Um, so the first thing I think is just to get them calmed down, to not make any rash decisions, to not bail and just take off. And then after that, they need, I think, a positive male role model. We need, as those of us who are fathers, we need to step up to walk alongside these young men and to teach them, train them, mentor them, help them with the changes that are going on in their lives. And that's a big part of what we do is try to train what we call coaches to mentor young men and just walk alongside them and teach them and train them that it is a good thing to be a father, that it's the fear of responsibility doesn't have to stay there. That fear of an unknown future doesn't have to stay there, and it's not the end of the world, as some portray it to be, that all of a sudden my life is over because I'm going to become a father. And to get them to understand that your life is just beginning, that it's a whole different lifestyle, but it's just a wonderful um, change in time of life. Um, they just need to know that responsibility is not a bad thing. Taking responsibility is a good thing. Um, Help them just to see that um, the initial news, if it's an unplanned pregnancy, is not the worst thing that ever happened to them. And I've heard that term many, many times. Yeah.
That I would definitely know that you have. I used
Yes.
to I
Yes.
used to work with teenage boys in our choice program, and I know the a lot of them, were scared to death when they found out a girl was pregnant,
Yeah.
and a lot of them didn't have fathers in their lives, so they didn't have a good example of what that was, what it meant, what the responsibility is. Is there is there something that you can tell these young men today that will help them understand their responsibility to get over the fear, but just
Yeah.
take on that responsibility?
Yeah. They're going to be held responsible by society or even the courts,
Yeah.
whether they want to accept it or not. Um, but we always try to get them to embrace the thought of responsibility. They need to know, and I have no doubt that this is the case, that God has designed men with certain roles in life, and He
Mm-hmm.
has hardwired men with the need and the really desire, if they cut through a lot of layers of stuff, to want to protect and to provide for their kids.
Hmm.
That's just a role that we're designed for. And it's not a role that is to be feared. And they need to know that God makes no mistakes. That because that because the timing may not be in their plans, does not mean that it's not going to be a good thing.
Hmm.
Um, they can, choose to walk away from that responsibility, but they need to know that they're walking away from one of the greatest joys in life that has been afforded to them. That really, it's just a different role they can step into, and they need to know that they're not the only ones who've been there before.
Yeah.
That it's nothing new on the face of the earth, but we all have to make that transition. And truth be told, Mike, I think all men would say when even if they were trying for a baby, when you get that news that you're going to be a father, there's still a certain amount of fear, because the responsibility, you're thinking, my goodness, I'm now responsible for another human being, and for meeting their needs. So, um, even if you're planning and you think you've got all your ducks in a row and you're ready, still when that news comes, it's like, oh my,
Yeah.
you know, life has just changed. Um, it's amazing, as you well know. It's just an amazing thing. It just needs to be embraced
Right.
and help these young men to see what a great thing it is.
Yeah. Because, like you said, we're both fathers, and I love kids, and I enjoy watching them grow up. And I know yours are
Yeah,
in their 20s, mine are
yeah,
in their 30s and 20s. Uh, and and it's amazing to, I can still remember when they were just little babies, and now they're
oh yeah,
grown people and doing their own thing, and it just it's mind boggling. It's, you know,
yeah,
and
and it
I
goes so
really,
fast.
I would say that I don't even think the fear ever goes away, Be- because you're always afraid of, what could happen to your child, and what,
Yes,
how your child is going to turn out, and all
yeah,
those different fears. So like you mentioned, embrace it. you know
yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, you can embrace it or you can go hide under the bed. It's those are your two extreme choices. But yeah, it just goes too fast. You can remember when they were small, but um, you look back and say, where did the time go?
Yeah.
And you can look back and say, man, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. I wish I wouldn't have done uh, this the way I did it. And you can question yourself till the day you die, but
Yeah. Well,
still, just the idea you've been able to be part of that is just
yeah.
amazing looking back all these years later.
And one thing I always tell kids, and men, period, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
you do your best. And I
yeah,
know even at, my age, and I'm still thinking, man, if I had have known that when I was back then, I would have
yeah,
done this
yeah,
differently. But, I did the best that I could with the information that I had.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's and that's something I think we need to share with expectant fathers is that you don't have to worry about being a perfect dad. The first thing you need to worry about is just being there.
Yeah.
Um, but you're going to look back and have regrets. There's a lot of stuff that we have in our curriculum or that we try to share through pregnancy resource centers that I'm like, man, I wish I would have known that.
Yeah.
I can go back and share it now, but I wish somebody would have told me this and this and this. And you can only prepare a man to a certain extent. And I would always tell my guys this, that I can tell you this, and we can get together every week and have a one-on-one session, and we can do every study that we can and all those things, and I still cannot explain to you what it means to be a father until
Mm-hmm.
you are a father.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we're all probably uh, guilty, the good side and the bad side, of telling our kids, well, just wait till you're a parent. Just wait till you have kids. Um, and we use it almost as a warning, but at the same time, we want to say, just wait till you're a parent, because there's few things on earth um, better than that.
Yeah.
Um, and they need to hear that from us. They hear the bad stuff, and they hear the dad screaming, don't make me turn this car around, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to hear more of what a joy it's been to be your dad.
Yeah.
You know.
So I think you mentioned that, and I will say that we all have said, "Oh, wait till you become a parent. You're gonna see," and that puts the fear in them instead of saying, "Oh,
Yes, it's true.
wait till you become a parent. You're gonna see the blessing." We have to change the
Yes,
narrative a little bit,
you're
and
right. You're right.
I think unknowingly we are scaring the kids, and
Yeah.
when we should be encouraging them and not to do it too early, but to encourage them to embrace it when it does happen and when they're ready.
Yeah, you're right. And we may say it in a joking way, but it still probably comes out like, oh boy,
Yeah.
um, I'm not sure I want to wait to be a parent. I'm not sure I want to be a parent. Um, and that is, dads are known for their silliness and their goofiness and their bad jokes and things like that. And our attempt at humor sometimes comes out, or at least me, uh, attempt at humor doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Um, especially if it's sarcasm. It doesn't work
Oh,
with
that's me.
yeah. Well, I last night at church, I was talking to a kid who I had known his father since he was that age, 7, 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of kidding around with him about his dad. And I think I actually scared him. uh, and I was just kind of kidding around, and later, Amy, my wife, told me, said, he's too young to get that kind of humor. He thinks you're being serious, even though you're trying to be cute. He's not getting your humor. And probably I had to talk to his dad later and basically say, hey, I didn't mean to. Of course, his dad found it humorous. So we had to make sure that his son, before he left church, knew that I was just kidding,
Yeah.
that his dad was a great, great guy and he was a great kid. Um, but sometimes we're not very successful at trying to lighten the situation, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, that's part of our nature.
Yes. Yeah,
Well,
that's for
Tony,
sure.
unfortunately, that's our time for today. But before we go, I definitely would like for you to tell our audience more about uh, that and your organization, dadhood.org. Excuse me, I went brain
Yeah.
dead there for a minute. But I want you to tell
Oh,
more.
I do that all the time.
It was our ages, I know.
Oh
Let's blame it
yes,
on
blame it
that.
on that. Right.
But we're going to tell them a little bit more about dadhood.org, how they can get in touch with
Okay.
you. And even if they are an organization or a church and would like to get your instructions and your program, how can they go about doing that?
Well, dadhood.org is our website, and everything that we do as a ministry, everything that we offer, all of our printed resources are available there. Um, we have curriculum to work with young men, to do mentoring classes, or to do, fatherhood classes with more than just one-on-one. Do it with a group. Um, we have some other pro-life book. We have a book about to help pregnancy centers or even churches start men's ministries. Things that I wish I had known in 2001, how to get started from scratch, perhaps. Then we have some other resources to help pregnancy resource centers get men involved and be able to get mentors and get that set up. So they can reach me through that. Tony at dadhood.org is my email. There's some other contact information on there about we're on Facebook with our page is Dadhood, and of course I'm on LinkedIn and some other things. But there's a lot of ways to get in touch with us, and uh, you know, hopefully maybe give some free advice or help in some way, give some guidance. I know there are a lot of ministries out there who want to serve dads. I hear it all the time. I hear it at conferences and things. We want to serve dads. We just don't know where to start. And that's what our ministry is all about, helping get them up and running, get them established, get some guys trained to work with young men, and hopefully we can help somebody do that.
Okay. Now you have are these books or these pamphlets on the different stages of fatherhood or about dadhood?
The first thing that we wrote from working with dads, the lessons and the curriculum is called Preparing for Dadhood. It's a has 40 lessons in it and some Bible studies and different things like that. Um, but it's something that we offer. We have a book. The book that helps them get started is Building Dads in Pink Buildings. And pink buildings is referring to pregnancy resource centers that are mostly seen as women's centers or women's ministries to help um, overcome that culture of being female oriented only, and to help them get past that view of young men that it's a pink building. It's not a place for them. And we try to help in several different ways. Preparing for Dadhood's a curriculum. That book is available. Defending Dadhood helps centers who are trying to um, stop abortion through that men who are abortion minded or abortion vulnerable. It's a handbook to help them answer their questions. We have a new um, booklet, I would say. It's only 8 or 10 pages. That's called A Few Good Men, that tries to help centers um, find mentors and how to keep them on board. Working on a new one right now that won't be out till later this year, called It Takes Two, that we can't just leave the men out of the mix. But all these things really, we on our website there, we made them, instead of printing as we did a long time ago, we went to downloads. So you can just download PDF files and you can print them if you want, or just use them as like a Kindle type thing. You can print lessons or whatever you need them, but that really keeps down on the costs, because
Yeah.
ministries are not known for rolling in money, rolling in cash. So we try to keep that as friendly as we can, budget friendly and user friendly.
Okay. Yeah, and you're right. Churches and organizations, and I know organizations for men are generally not rolling in cash.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it's great that you guys are doing that. It's great that you are, as we mentioned earlier when we were talking, that you listen to what God asks you to do, because apparently He sees it and He knows it, and He's directed you and your other men and mentors that this is an issue and we need to address the issue. We need to get these men to step up to the plate and be the dads that they can be. And I want to thank you so much for all that you're doing and all that your group is doing and your organization is doing. And, we're going to definitely stay in touch. And I'd love to see us grow even more so.
Thank you.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be our show for today. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I want to thank Tony and for coming on the show and talking about dadhood.org. But if you're looking for resources that can help you, go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com and click on resources header. There you will find a list of different resources like attorneys, counselor, therapists, and fatherhood program, just to name a few. And before you go, don't forget, hit that subscribe button and share it and let other people, men that you know about the Father Show with Mike Thompson, so that they can get this information, especially if you're a young man that you may have in your household needs something like this. And that's why we're here. And you can catch any of our shows on our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and you can also find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Spotify, Amazon, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other apps. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And until next week, I ask that you stay safe and that you remember, men, step up to the plate and be the best man that you can be. All right? Until next time, God bless.